The Public Safety will now come to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Alderman Odenberg. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Aldrich. Chair Narayan.
Here.
Alderman Odenberg. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And at this time, I will accept a motion to approve the minutes of Thursday, October 19th. All right, there's a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Odenberg. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Aldrich. Chair Narayan.
Aye.
Alderman Odenberg. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. We have 6 aye votes.
All right, thank you. With that, we have sustained the motion and approved the minutes. At this point, we will take up Board Bill 93. There's just a quick housekeeping thing first. So, Alderman Aldridge, if you could get the committee sub properly in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. As mentioned from the chair, we need to just do a quick bringing Board Bill 93, the original version, in front of us first to be voted on to the committee. So I'll make a motion that I bring forward Board Bill 93 to the Public Safety Committee.
There's been a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Odenberg. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Aldrich.
Aye.
Chair Narayan.
Aye.
Alderman Odenberg. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. We have 6 aye votes.
Thank you. And with that, Alderman Aldridge, I'll accept a motion to adopt Board Bill 93 committee substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to adopt Board Bill 93 committee substitute.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Odenberg. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Aldrich.
Aye.
Chair Narayan.
Aye.
Alderman Odenberg. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. We have 6 aye votes.
All right, with that, we've sustained the motion, and we have Board Bill 93 committee substitute properly in front of us. Alderman Aldridge, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I know we had a discussion about Board Bill 93 committee sub last week. I'm just going to touch on some highlights of what the committee sub have in it. So the goal of what we're trying to do with Board Bill 93 committee sub is clarify some language that was in 2 previous bills. One that was a bill that set up the detention facility oversight, and another one that set up the division, the DFOB under Vaccaro's bill. So what we did is we repealed Vaccaro's bill and combined it into the one bill that was offered by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard that got passed. With doing that, it's just trying to clear up the ordinance so it can be in one place when we talk about detention facility oversight. And then we clarified in the committee sub exactly what the role of the civilian oversight or the detention facility oversight investigators' role is, as well as board members. One of the key things that we addressed also in this amended this ordinance that we're trying to amend is the training. A lot of members have echoed over and over that it wasn't clear of what training was necessary, let alone how many hours. So we're making it very clear that only 6 months of training is needed, 25 hours, and we laid out those necessary trainings that need to take place for a DFOB member to be able to kind of do their role. We also put in there that ongoing training is still an option. It's not necessary, but it's an option that they can continue to have. We moved over the language around special counsel, but we did add a kind of caveat in there towards the end to ensure that DFOB members, if asked for special counsel, if there's a conflict of interest, that they still have to go through the city councilor office, and the city council would then provide a list of attorneys that DFOB members could be able to pick from within 30 days. If the city council does not respond, then they can pick their own counsel. And then lastly, what we did with non-interference, which was already in the old ordinance, is we added some language towards the end that mentions that even if there's a criminal investigation, that there at least still needs to be communication between the public safety director's office and DFOB members. Since the last conversation that we had last week, I know we had DFOB members in front of us. I know this week we'll be hearing from the mayor's administration. There was a lot of input added to those conversations that I think even after we hear from the mayor's office, maybe to be able to help a final version. I know talking with some of the advocates and talking to some of the members, there are some errors still in the committee sub that we do want to clean up, such as access for DFOB members and what they have information to. So there will be another change, but this is a starting document that we wanted to bring, that I've worked with the mayor's office on, I've worked with advocates on, to try to make sure that we get the language in place and right, so that DFOB members, investigators, and the director of public safety all are working together to actually do what this board was charged to do. So with that, I would close, because like I say, I know we talked about a lot of this last week.
Would you, do you have any preference on if Coyle or Ms. Barton speaks first?
I believe director is signed up first. Are you signed up first, Mr. Director? Okay, so Mr.
All right.
Director.
All right, Mr. Coyle, please proceed.
One, two. Good. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I'd like to first, because some of you I have not met, introduce myself and go through a process, since I'm the new kid on the block, go through a process that has been taken with me, okay? My name is Charles Coyle. I'm the Director of Public Safety. I was appointed to the Interim Director of Public Safety on February 3rd, and recently appointed as the Permanent Director. Now, when I came into this position, prior to that, there were a number of things under public safety that seemed to stay in the media. One was 911, the other one was the Oversight Commission. And upon being appointed on February 13th, I began to have discussions about oversight and what was taking place. All right, I had discussions with the then Commissioner of Oversight, I think it was Matt Brumman. I had conversations with the Commissioner of Corrections. I've had discussions with the City Attorney, and I've had discussions with the Circuit Attorney, both the previous and the current Circuit Attorney. All of these positions are mentioned in the ordinance. And there were questions that arrived around them. As I reviewed the ordinance, I had questions for the, at that time, current commissioner about their interactions with these different positions. And I forgot one, which is the Director of Personnel.
I'm sorry, Mr. Coyle. If there's any way you can speak into the mic.
Oh, you're not
Public
hearing
can
me?
barely, yes.
Okay.
Is your light on?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. So what I just mentioned, if you didn't hear it, was another stakeholder, which was the Director of Personnel. When I read the ordinance, it talked about the ability of the Oversight Board to make recommendations and decisions based on policies, procedures, and employees. It also talked about the fact that rules and regulations are promulgated and should be in consultation with those people I just named. So this is why I met with each one of them, because I wanted their understanding of what these procedures were. So to give you an example, if the board is going to recommend that we terminate an employee, the Director of Personnel must be involved in this city. So in meeting with the director, she had never seen the document, so the consultation had not taken place. I met with the prosecuting attorney, who didn't want to discuss it until the city people had already approved it, meaning the city councilor, the commissioner of corrections, as well as the director of personnel. So that was important to me because I had to find out why it wasn't working, if the communications was going on. And so when I would ask these questions of the commissioner, I would get different answers. And I got one answer that, well, we don't need their approval. Well, I would agree, the ordinance doesn't say that, but you need to consult with them because they're going to be involved when you make a decision. All right? The next question was about orientation training. Now, this board had been in operation for almost a year. Again, I came February 13th. So I wanted to know where we were with it. Where's our orientation? I knew we had done about 1 or 2 classes, but the rest hadn't been completed. This is in May of 2023. Many of them took office in July of 2022. So I wanted to know why that was. And I'm saying all of this because I have a responsibility, I believe, in making sure these departments run as effectively and efficiently as possible. So, and after asking these questions and not getting a response, the one response I got was a holdup with the orientation was the Commissioner of Corrections and the city attorney. Well, the Commissioner of Corrections only had 1 class, but you had 11 total classes that had to be done. So I couldn't accept that. So with the orientation, I began to have the Commissioner of Oversight and the Commissioner of Corrections meet weekly. And what I requested of them was to meet weekly and tell me what you agree on and what you don't agree on as far as the operations and the ordinance. Well, that began in the 1st of May or the end of June, or mid-June. And as we began approaching certain other questions with the commissioner, he did resign on May 30th. This was still important on May 30th. So I brought in, and you're going to hear from her, Nicole Barton, Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, Executive Council, Commissioner, that I asked to come in and help get the training done with the board, the orientation training, to assist in getting the consultation done with the procedures. So if you don't have an agreed upon process, it's difficult to go through and move in and do your job. So we began this June 1st, where Ms. Barton, and she'll speak to the training and the consultation, began that process to get the consultation completed. I think it's in the city council's office currently and should be coming out. And then it will go to the circuit attorney. It has been through the Commissioner of Corrections. It has been through the Director of Personnel. Okay? So we're waiting. Once we get it from the circuit attorney, then it goes to the prosecuting attorney. The important part about that is that the prosecuting attorney has a major role, as you guys know, to play in this, especially when it deals with criminal investigations. So that's where we are with the procedures, consultation of the procedures. The training since June, I think we have completed 7 training classes. Right? This is with Ms. Barton coming in and assisting the board in getting this done. And I mentioned this because it's important. When I took over, we had almost been in operation for a year and had only done 2. Orientation training, in my opinion, is needed. It's needed because when you go into the correction facility, though you may be talking to a detainee, the detainee may have counsel. That detainee has rights. So we need to make sure that we have at least done the things that the law says we need to do in training the members doing it. With our procedures, we need to make sure that the procedures we're following have been approved, and everybody that needs to be a part of that, all of the stakeholders, have had an opportunity to comment and make recommendations or suggestions with those. Just to ignore those, just to ignore the fact that you need to do the orientation training or you need to provide a consultation with the rules is concerning to me, that we just want to move forward with it without those things. And that's something I wouldn't allow. Now, I mentioned this verbally to the board, and I mentioned it in writing in a letter when they began to ask for the Commissioner of Corrections to be removed. The steps that we were going through to make sure they could do this job. And let me pause right here. I believe in oversight. I'm a lifelong St. Louis, a Black man. I understand the importance of oversight. But I also understand when you move outside the lines and you don't follow the law. We all have witnessed where the state was preparing to reduce SCOB, the Civilian Oversight Board of Police, with subpoena power. And it came very close. And that's important to me. So if we're going to do this, we're going to follow the law in doing it. And I know that we're talking about changes to it, but I thought this was important because I don't know many of you guys. And I thought it was important for you to know where I stand with it. I think we have to follow the ordinance as close as possible. And I know we have some people that may be reluctant and want to get to their job. And I want to say this, I believe that most of that board are committed, volunteers, they're willing to do the work. I have been following their training. Many of them are making their time available. I am very sensitive to the fact that they have jobs, right? They have jobs Monday through Friday probably and don't have as much time. But somehow we have to get it done. Now in September or late August, I separated the staff because the staff was doing the training with the residential board members, the civilian board members. So I separated their training so the staff could do theirs because we pay them. So you can come to work and do your training while you're at work. That means we can get closer to our goal. And our goal is being able to go into the Justice Center to do investigations, to help in making recommendations if things are not in the right order, right? And so they've completed their training. And once we have done with the promulgation of rules, so we know the process that they're going to utilize, they should be able to do what they need. I think that by the end of this month, we're going to be close to many people on the board completing theirs. Now, I took this up in June, and I thought we would get done sooner, but we have not. But we must complete the process so that we can get people moving in the right direction so the board can do what it needs to do. One of the things I'd like to say, because I've given my personal number to certain people. The chairman has my personal number, my work number, and he and I talk, okay? I have called him to inform me about things. He has called me. I have never not answered his call except for one occasion. After we had the detainees trying to hold a hostage in the Justice Center, he called me while I was in the middle of preparing for a press conference. But my media person was there, and he called him next, and I asked him to step out the room and take the call. But other than that, I have always accepted his call, and I always will. It's important for me to do that. I have talked to him and he asked for me to set up a meeting with he and the Commissioner of Corrections. I was excited about that. I told him then, that's a fantastic thing. I think we need to build a relationship so it's not argumentative. What I saw before I came into this office is two departments in public safety fighting in the public. Air and I dirty laundry. Okay, maybe that's what we're supposed to do. But when that happens, we have two different sides of an issue, and no one's actually talking about or understanding what the other is saying in most cases. Now, I've been around for a long time. I've been a manager since 1997. I came from the fire department where I spent 45 years. I try to keep up with the management, new traits, new tactics, but I understand the job. I understand when something is wrong, there's generally a messaging problem. And I just had this conversation. The message coming down gets filtered or changed, and I didn't want that to happen. So the message they got from my office, I wanted it to be from me, so they understood it. And there was no one else that could add their 2 cents, right? So we had clear messages. I had to do that with 911. The only one communicating with the managers in 911. So I knew the message they're getting. I knew the things we need to do to bring on new people. I needed to understand what kind of issues they were having so that I didn't confuse them with me giving a message today and someone else giving one tomorrow. And so I say that so that we know when we talk about the bill, there's some things that concern me, but there's some things that I'm excited about because it gives more clarification. I don't think we need to, and I'll tell you one of the things that concern me is the maximum hours. That does not leave us room, clearly, for best practices, in my opinion. Things will change. DFOP is new to us. We'll find that we need to do new things, and we'll be back in this room trying to increase training hours. The ordinance set out the 11 orientation trainings that need to be done. And I think they take 1 or 2 hours when they're doing that. Again, Ms. Barton is going to cover that. But when we lessen those hours, in my opinion, and we put that as a maximum, we are really shortchanging ourselves for change in the future. So I will take questions if anyone has them for me.
Thank you, Director Coyle. I'll just go down the list here. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Thank you for being here. I don't have any questions yet. I think I will wait till I hear the entire presentation, but thank you, and thank you for making sure that we understood the position that you were coming from on this, because some of us did have questions about it.
Okay, thank you.
Alderwoman Keys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions at this time.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
I know we're working through the answer, but I guess from what is initially proposed so far, I mean, also being new, but just seeing it from the outside perspective, right? We have the DFOB is not working, right? There are issues with the jail. I mean, just the CJC, just front and center. There are things that are not working. So I guess what are the things that, whether this legislation, if we do, and I know you mentioned there are things that are good and there are things that are concerning, but will we be here in a year? You know, if we pass something like this, are we gonna, not us be here in a year, but I mean, is this the thing that solves it? Because it just seems like, again, from a perspective that we fix something and then it doesn't work, or that it doesn't, you know, we're still not doing the thing that it's set up to be. So, I mean, so I'm just curious if, will this fix it, or are we gonna be here in another year with another set of things that didn't quite work?
Let me add this, because thanks for that question, because it reminded me about important things that we are doing. See, I didn't say the Justice Center was broke. I didn't say that. We've had 9 deaths. Most of them came from medical issues. And again, I haven't been here very long, but to me, first thing I wanted to know was, is our commissioner medically trained? No. What we have done with the support of the mayor, I signed the rec moving $2 million to help us get people to evaluate medical conditions, right? Someone that can tell us when we have a detainee, if there's a problem, what that problem is, and if they're getting the appropriate treatment. That's important to me in doing that. And these are positions that would be put in the Director of Health's department. We had a conversation early on about the RFP for a new medical third-party contractor, because I think she needs to be involved. We need people who understand the medical state issues that we have, especially in this city, to be a part of who we hire to do it. So that's number one. Number two is that we recognize, or I recognize, that many of the people that we have in our Justice Center have mental health issues. And are we providing the very best service that we can do for them? So this is where this other evaluation comes from that we have talked about out of the Department of Health, that they're going to be assigned directly for CJC to deal with the medical issues. That's important, and that's where many of the deaths have come. Someone who came in with a medical issue. Well, the question I have, because many of the detainees, and I'm going to talk about who they are, had they been treated before they got there? Chances are no. Had they seen someone for a mental illness before they got there, those who have that issue, and I believe there's no to that. Now, I'm not saying that to scapegoat, because when they're in our custody, I would suggest to you we need to provide it, right? Once we have them, then the mental health issues we must address. And some of these young men and women have never had it addressed before, I would suggest to you. But whatever you did to become a part of the detention facility says that we now need to address that issue as much as we can. We may only have you for a few years, if that, but we can do what we can do. Where there are health issues, we need to try to address them. We all know that many people that come from a poverty-stricken area do not get medical care. And so when they're in our custody, there's an opportunity for us to do that. That's big for me, all right? If we can do nothing else, we can provide that. So secondly, everyone in this room has witnessed the horrific crimes that have taken place in this. We sometimes forget about it because it didn't happen yesterday. But we had witnessed the murders that have been in front of us on TV and newspapers. And our police department has told us that their report says they have a 75% clearance rating on murders. That means that they are catching 3 out of 4 of people that commit homicides. Where do these people go? They come to the Justice Center. These are sometimes dangerous people. We have to still treat them with humanity, but we know they're not Boy Scouts. We know they're going to act up, so we shouldn't be surprised that they act up when they get an opportunity, right? Because that's what they did on the street. That's what they're going to do there as well. And I'm really talking about the situation where the two young men were helping serve breakfast and wanted to take advantage of one of the correctional officers. Those and other things are going to take place because of who we are. Now, we know also that we have a staffing problem. The city has a staffing problem. I have a staffing problem. The police department has a staffing problem. Every department has a staffing problem, and correctional officers. We have been working to get incentives and pay raises to try to attract more correctional officers because we need them. With the media that we've gotten, we have lost potential people to hire. We had people ready to come work with us and then change their mind. So I think we're doing the things to correct it. I have visited the Justice Center on a number of occasions. Excuse me for 1 second. I have visited the correctional facility on a number of occasions. One of the things I instituted is unannounced tours of the correctional facility. I have some of my people taking tours of CJC unannounced. They may get 10 minutes so they can go in and tell me what's going on. If there's something out of place, if it's something that we need to directly do, those type of things. I've done some other things, but I don't want to speak about them in an open forum. If you need to know privately, I will tell you. But I have taken stock. Now, these are some of the things that I have spoken with the chair about in the conversations of what I was doing to try to correct some of the issues that people think they have. I need to prove them if they're there. So with that, I'll take more questions. I'm sorry if I got long-winded.
All right, moving along. Alderwoman Saunier.
Firstly, thank you for being here today and joining us. I have gotten to have a conversation with you, and I feel like I found such an interesting overlap between your experience in the fire department and now being director of public safety. And I know this situation is full of like high pressure and high emotions on all sides. One of the questions that I have, you mentioned that you thought it was a good idea for the jail commissioner and someone to sit down. And it's one of the questions that I asked when the DFOB members were here last week. Have the jail commissioner and members of DFOB had a meeting? Are there any regular check-ins? Because I know that some of the DFOB members have told me that they've requested several times to meet with the jail commissioner. Is there any steps happening with that?
Well, the meeting I discussed was one where the chairperson meet with the commissioner. And I think it has to start there. I think we have to begin by building relationships, not one that I'm coming to attack you, or not that I'm after your job. We need to have meetings where they can actually begin to relate with each other.
Is that planned or scheduled for the chair?
Well, it was planned. Reverend Gray actually suggested it. Not Chairman Gray actually suggested it. I think he had to cancel at the last minute. I don't know if that's been done or if it's been rescheduled. I'd like to see it rescheduled because my goal here, as a director of public safety, I have commissioners that get the jobs done. And I don't want to have to do their job. And so I need these things to work as smoothly as possible at times, even when they're going to be contentious. We can be contentious and still be respectful.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm looking forward to seeing if I can make happen.
Okay. Yeah, because I would recommend that. I think there's obviously some miscommunication. So anytime we can arrange for people to actually talk to each other rather than talking through press and media, I think it's good. And then my other question is really just about Alderman Aldridge's legislation, his bills. I know he outlined some of the key sections in it, so maybe in general, how do you feel about some of the changes in it? And then I can see, I have some specific questions about, I think there's some language in here that defines access for DFOB members. How do you feel about that? The access for DFO members, the proposed in the legislation for them when they go visit, get access to jails. And then he also has a section in here where the bill allows for a request for special counsel, for outside counsel for DFOB. So I'm just curious about how you feel about legislation.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I actually had a meeting with Alderman Aldridge, and it was about one or both of those issues. The access, I think that's something we have to work on, but I think, we're talking about that, and I'm speaking as a director, but I need an opinion from the commissioner. No one would want me making a change in their job without at least getting their opinion. And so I've done that, and I'm waiting on it, and there are some concerns. I think the complete language does attempt to say, well, if there is a circumstance where it can't happen, then it can't happen, and you need to notify them. And I'm okay with that part. But that needs more review, I do believe.
You saying the part about them getting, is right now?
Having access. Is there any reason they shouldn't have access? Let me give you an example. If there's a criminal investigation going on and they want to have access to one of the people involved, and that person has an attorney and the right steps aren't taken, that concerns me, because that's asking for legal action against the city, right? So I do think we need to spend more time on that access issue. I'm not ready to say that it's something I can support wholeheartedly right now.
Do you have any suggestions on because one of the complaints of DFOB members is that they're not getting access. So if it's not going to be like what's proposed, have you thought about or do you have a process in your mind of how you would like it to go for DFOB members to get access to the jail?
Well, that's what we do with the propagating of rules and regulation in the consultation. Because once you've done it there, you have an agreement on how you're going to move forward. And this is why it was important that these other stakeholders be a part of that consultation, because if they're not, when you attempt to do it, they're going to have an issue with it because you haven't shown it to them, you haven't discussed it with them. So I mentioned that earlier when I talked about the director of personnel. If we're going to try to terminate someone and we have not had the director of personnel in that consultation, I don't think that department is going to take that very well. So I think it's a small thing for us to ask that we consult with the people that we have to make decisions in that impact their authority or their department. And that's how I would answer that. I think we really need to make sure that though we consult with them and put those things in the rules and regulations. I think changing the ordinance to get certain things without having the rules in place, I think will bring us right back here. I believe if we have the rules in place that we're working on and then want to make changes, fine. But we'll also find that someone doesn't like the change that we're making to the ordinance at this point when we haven't finished our process. So I just think we need to take a closer look. I would love to say yes, but I can't say that right now because I just don't know all of the different issues. I'm not a jailer. I'm not a jail commissioner.
Yeah.
There are things that I don't know about the jail that I have to seek advice on. So I don't know what kind of things that would impact, right? I do know it impacts something if there's some type of investigation going on, criminal or otherwise. It will do that. But I think when we start adding these things to the rules, the promulgated rules and procedures, I think we answer that question. And we have agreements to do whatever it is that the board thinks they need to do. Now, we have investigators. And I think their access should be different than the board's. They should be able to investigate. And once their rules are set, because they have to have some rules that say how they're going to investigate, right? And that's the part where we're waiting to finalize. And once they have that, they should be able to do their job, because that's what they do. They investigate. They should be able to come in and talk to certain people. And I think it has to be this process as well. If I want to come in and talk to a certain detainee and investigate something with them, I think there has to be time to determine whether if that detainee has counsel or not. That's my opinion. So if I go in and I speak with that detainee because they are representatives of the city and they don't have counsel, have we opened up another door in doing that? So because you want to come in, it may mean that you can come in, but you can't speak to anyone. So now do we have an issue with that? Because before you go in and begin to speak with someone and don't know that they have rights, I think you kind of lean to open up a different type of legal action for the city. Your other question was about the city councilor.
And special counsel.
Legal counsel.
Yeah, the ability for the DFOB members to make a request for outside counsel.
Listen, because I didn't go to law school, I'm afraid to answer that. I think that's something that the city councilor should answer. The city councilor is the person that's going to have to defend me, the Commissioner of Corrections, the Director of Personnel, the DFOB members, the DFOB board. So I'm not going to try to answer that question, if you would forgive me, because I just don't think I'm qualified to answer that. I don't know the different.
So you think that the best person to decide if the DFOB member should get outside counsel is the city? Because I do see in the legislation it says that the city council will be the one to provide the list of, the city council would be the one to approve the request and to provide the list of attorneys. But I don't know if it's, I don't know. I think all those parties you just listed, one person represent all those entities. I think it could be hard at some point to represent all those folks at the same time, all of their interests.
Right.
So I don't know if it's best to leave it that way. And so I think what the legislation proposes, where it says the city council would give the list of lawyers and would have notification that outside counsel has been sought, to me, that's something that I would support and like. And so I think you're saying you'd rather not play it in
I
there?
said that. Yeah, I'd rather not answer it because I think they should. And one of my questions would be, and I'll have to reread it, I don't want to go off memory, whether the word shall is there or not. If the word shall is there, you have removed the city council's authority. So I don't know if it is or not. I just don't recall in reading the ordinance.
Okay. Yeah, I think that those are my two big questions. I would just say, I definitely would encourage communication. I definitely think, I understand saying, you don't want anyone to be overwhelmed. And I know in this situation, communication has happened after some asks have already been made publicly that can make the situation tense. But I just don't see how issues can be, if there's anything that could be resolved, it's going to result from people talking to each other. So I would definitely encourage us to create a dynamic where even if it's the chair and the commissioner, that they sit down and have some kind of conversation to figure out where they can align. And I think that might even help with the policy making too, so that we can hear, are there some things of like mutual concerns of overlapped and mutual desired steps for moving forward. So I would say that. And then I would also say, I do support the part of the legislation right now that says that it would be okay for DFOB to have outside counsel at the request of the counselor to give that notification, and that the counselor would provide the list of opportunities. And I think that has to happen if they're truly going to be able to do that oversight part that's in there. I don't see how it could, I could see some other conflicts with that part not there.
Again, if you would allow me to just bow out and let the city councilor address that, I would feel much better. Okay.
I yield my questions, Chair Narayan.
All right, thank you. Alderman Aldridge, do you have any questions for the director? Okay. All right, I'm going to circle back around. Alderwoman Keys has a question.
Mr. Coyle, I wanted to ask if you believe that the state public safety would be considered a stakeholder in this interest.
Say that, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Okay, so my question is, do you believe that the state public safety commission would possibly be considered a stakeholder?
The state
State
State Public
level.
Safety Commission or Commissioner?
Yeah.
Because I don't know legislative law, but I don't think so from my experience. I believe that the state gets involved with some things, but not with the city of St. Louis. And I say that because I spent time as the fire marshal, and we had a state fire marshal that was not allowed to come in the city and do things except with state properties. Okay, so that's why I say that. But there may be some legal statement somewhere that gives him that authority. I just don't believe it does. Now, let me say this. In a meeting we had about mental health, the state was involved because the state is a partner when it comes to mental health, right? The state is a partner when someone is deemed to be incompetent to stand trial, the state has to come into play. And that person should go to them. So they're very involved in that role. But just in the role of the Justice Center and detainees, I'm not sure if they're involved or should be involved.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and I have no questions, but I just wanted to thank you for your time and coming here today. I know that you're a busy man, so thank you for taking time out of your schedule here. And I guess next we'll hear from Ms. Barton. All right, Ms. Barton, please proceed.
Green.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Chair and members of the Public Safety Committee for having me here today. And I'm Nicole Barton. I'm the Executive Director for the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, but I'm also the inaugural Commissioner for the Civilian Oversight Board that started after the initial legislation was passed back in 2015. So I did help with all of the policies and procedures that we had, helped facilitate the trainings that our staff and board had, the complaint forms that we developed. We worked closely with SLMPD to develop policies and procedures so that we could do the work that was needed at the time. And also fought the union. The police union filed an injunction against us to prevent us from doing some of the work that we needed to do at the time. But we won. So I said all that to say that I'm very passionate about civilian oversight, and we want to do everything that we can do to make sure that this is working and that it's effective and it's efficient and that we are protecting our citizens and our detainees. So I just wanted to highlight, thank you. I looked through the board bill and there's great clarification language in there that defines the roles of the board members and the staff, and I'm sure the staff and the board is very happy about that as well. I think that that's a great path forward to help clear some of the language and some of the issues that we've been working through for the past few months. So the board contacted the mayor's office back in April with some concerns that they had. and the mayor asked if I could step in and listen to the concerns and find out what was going on so that we could provide assistance. And so I attended a meeting on April 27th, a virtual DFOB meeting, and I did hear the concerns and the frustrations of the board. I was also concerned and frustrated with them that they had not been able to work in almost a year's time. So we came back and talked about what we could do to help provide assistance to the board and the staff at the time. On May 3rd, I responded in writing to the board with some of the concerns that they had, and we laid out some of the next steps that we thought would be helpful to provide a path forward. Since June 28th, we have completed 7 trainings that were offered. We have, as Chief Coyle said, staff has been fully trained. We expedited that training so that staff could have that done. We have 1 training left. So most of the board members will be fully trained by the end of this month. We have a few that have not completed training. But I just, like I said, wanted to lift up some of the language that we have that's proposed in the board bill that I think would be great. And just a few concerns, and I think we might have hashed this out a little bit already, but I saw language in there that would change board members' age from 18 to 16. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't do that, that it would remain at the age of 18. And we wanted to make sure that we, talk about training. Training is necessary. We want to make sure that the training to this board is vital to the work that they do, because some of the findings that are produced out of boards could be subject to litigation. So we want to make sure that we're protecting our board members, we're protecting the rights of detainees, so that we can ensure that the work is moving forward the best way that we can. And this board also has enhanced powers. And so with that, training will empower them to be able to do the work, and it would stand up against litigation, providing that we could possibly end up in litigation. So like I said, we have 1 training left, and the majority of board members will be fully trained. We have a few members that have declined to attend any additional trainings. And with that, we just also wanted to, I wanted to thank all of the members that have attended all the trainings that we have to date, because they'll be able to, listen to the completed investigations when they come in and be able to make those recommendations and participate in the process. And we have more than half of the members that have signed their confidentiality forms so that they can review the confidential records that are contained in those investigations as well. So with that, we are committed to this work. We want to make sure that we can do everything that we can do to work together and make sure that the work is being done. Chief Coyle also talked about the procedures, the policies and procedures, so I wanted to let you all know where those are. When I was asked to step in and help at the end of May, I started working with the commissioner of CJC to, first, let me go back. There was some draft policies and procedures from the board. So we took that draft and just started building out from that original draft that the board had already written. And so I met with Commissioner Clemens Abdullah every week so that we could work on the language and the policies and procedures. And then as the ordinance states, we would work in consultation with the Department of Personnel. So I worked with the Department of Personnel every week until we got that portion of the policies and procedures outlined. So we don't want to violate civil service rules and regulations or anything like that. So we wanted to make sure that the back end of the policies and procedures were laid out well too. So those policies and procedures are with the city councilor's office now, and hopefully we'll have those back in a really short time frame. happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you. I'll just go down the roll here. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Barton, for your continued commitment to this work that I've personally witnessed. I want to make sure I took my notes right and heard right. You said the concern you all had, and I'm very familiar with that concern because we went back and forth when we were getting this to a bill that we could pass, right, and not just be performative with it. And we were working together with everybody. The last time was the age issue. And so I know that was one concern. Did I miss any other concerns, or is to right now, is that the only concern?
Yes, so the age, we kind of had conversations about a cap on a maximum amount of training. So all of the training, by the end of this month, board will be trained. All of those training hours added up to about 25 hours. But if we put a maximum of 25 hours on it, it would limit if there were training components in the future that if best practices change, or there's other trainings that board members might need in the future, it might limit them from being able to get that. So some of the subject matter experts that I brought in to conduct these trainings said, oh, it usually takes me 4 hours to do these trainings. And I was like, no. We want to make it a high-level training with the important aspects that would pertain to this board. And I would ask them to keep it to an hour or an hour and a half at most. And so we were able to get those done in those time frames. But we don't want to really put a cap on it because that could change depending on a new commissioner who might come in, or like I said, if there's best practices that might change, that would alter the training that we already have developed.
So, and for my clarity, this training, just so I know, the training that we're talking about here, maximum, or if we change that verbiage or however we phrase that, that is just to be able to initially operate in your capacity as a board member.
Yes.
This doesn't put any kind of cap on any ongoing training, right? Okay.
So in the past, and I'll just give you an example, when I was the commissioner for the Civilian Oversight Board, as we were working through some of the investigations, we would review some investigations, and at times we would say, you know what, we didn't get this training. There were times that I called in the Force Investigative Unit to come into our meetings and provide us with more training. Our staff wanted to get more report writing training, and our board asked for additional training as we were moving through the process. And so those are just optional. We just want to make sure it's open. If they did want additional training, they could have that available to them.
Yeah, I really agree with that, because you just never know. Even for instance, if a law or an operation or a rule or anything changes on the other side, our board members need to be fully aware and abreast of all of that ongoingly, so that they will be able to operate in their full capacity as well. So I definitely don't see anything wrong with that. I'll wait to hear from my committee colleagues if they have any other questions. But again, thank you for being here and for giving us clarity on the other two.
Thank you.
All right, moving along, Alderman Key.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Barton, I guess one of the questions that I'm trying to understand are the issues, or I imagine there are multiple issues. So we know that the training, but it sounds like that's a problem that may well be on its way to being solved. So when the DFOB has access, or is the contention that they should have access to those persons incarcerated, or the information gleaned from completed or ongoing investigation? So is it both? Is it one?
Yes, so I think that's why, we were uplifting the need to clarify the roles of the staff and the board, so that there's clear defined scope of work that each that the staff and that the board would do. So the investigators need to be able to go in to the facility at all times and conduct investigations. They need to be able to talk to people that are involved in the complaint, whether it be other COs who might have witnessed something happen, whether other detainees who might have witnessed something happen. They need to be able to have ongoing access. And so board members, we want members to be able to come in and have access to, and we discussed being able to come in once they're fully trained along with staff members. So we do want both the staff and the board to have access
Access to?
to the jail. I'm sorry.
Okay, so is that access to detainees, or is that access to the paper or electronic investigation material?
Both.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nothing. I yield, thank you.
All right. Alderwoman Velasquez has left us. Alderwoman Sunier.
Thank you so much. Ms. Barton, I want to make sure, especially since this is being recorded, that it's, known how much you have really worked with us in these conversations, how many meetings have went into this. I've had a lot of questions about things in the legislation, and both you and Alderwoman Clark Hubbard have been so helpful in really answering those questions. I know we don't always work together and have conversations, but you have done a great job in engaging it, helped me get some of the information, some of the things I'm asking, I know, but I just want to make sure that, that the public knows, because I think that's important, that they see that this has been a collaborative process of working together and figuring this out. One of the things that I wanted to clarify was Alderwoman Clark Hubbard's question was that those are your only concerns right now with the proposed legislation, is the age component and the maximum training component?
The other thing I think we wanted to add is to make sure that you all have the opportunity to, these are your appointees, as well as mayoral appointees, that you all have additional powers if there's members that are not complying with the law. So that was the only other thing. Sorry, I forgot to mention that.
So you would like to see some language that says, defines a process for removing these if they're not complying with the training? Okay, I'm just writing this down for my notes. All right, and then the other thing.
But just in general, I just want to, not just training, but just not complying with the board rules and regulations and/or training.
Okay. And then my other question was to the point. Well, one of my questions would really be for Alderman Aldridge, but the other question I would have is on the training language. Do you think that it's possible that we can put in some language in there that says, here's the maximum training, but it's subject to any state or other law change? And then I also saw that what's in this legislation, I do see that it says, and any additional changes that are optional, because what we talked about that I thought was interesting, especially after attending some meetings, is that you have members that have wanted, you have a speaker come and present, and they have additional questions and want that opportunity. So I'm just wondering if you think that it might be room in the legislation to avoid a situation of what you were discussing with Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Maybe we can add some language that says, this is always subject to us being compliant with the other laws in place that we have to comply to, or something like that.
Yeah, I think just changing the word from maximum to maybe minimum, or even just saying minimum of, if you want to put 20, or, like I said, we've added up the training that we've done to date, and it's been about 25 hours. So that's how we came up with that number. But I think just instead of saying maximum, put minimum, and then that leaves it open.
Yeah, I just know I'm curious to hear from the DFO board members, because I don't think that they would want to see, I think they like them there, so I think maybe we should talk about what is a true maximum, so that it gives room if something has to be added, and then add some language for, and maybe, usually in my experience, when you set a maximum number, you go above so that you're always under. I think that might be an option, but I think that the maximum component was in the legislation to address some of the issues of the DFOB members saying our expectations are not clear and it's so vague, so we feel like it could just be put in place based off of feelings at the time rather than a clearly defined
Yeah.
process.
And I totally agree with the board that it was not clearly defined when they started, that expectations, the roles, it was not clearly defined. And that probably has resulted in a lot of the frustration. And so that expectation and being able to clearly define it moving forward, I think is very important because that we're not given that opportunity in the beginning.
Yeah, and I think with that, I don't have any more questions. I just want to say, you know, I know that the last person in the role was there for quite some time, almost a year, and what you've been able to accomplish in these few months that you've been there, I am so impressed by. I don't know, you know, what impediments were there before, but to me, I can see that you're working very hard to get, you know, all of the members as trained as possible, to clarify the training. I know you were able to show me a list of here's all the trainings that they have to do and put some of those things in place. So I just want to let you know, like, I see how hard you've been working to just address these concerns and to make things as clear as possible. And just thank you for that.
Thank you, Alderwoman.
All right, Alderman Aldridge. Anything? Okay. It would surprise me if you did, but be rude not to ask. And I don't have anything. Thank you so much, Ms. Barton, for coming and for being a part of these discussions. Like my colleague just said, I know that you've been putting in a lot of work through this. Oh, she has one more thing to add, it sounds like. Go ahead.
I have one more question. At our last meeting with the other members, Alderwoman Keys had mentioned the training was defined as 6 months, and we were talking about if 4 months might be option. I know we kind of have gotten more into defining the hours, but we had talked about, instead of the hours, putting a window of time that it might be acceptable to have training, and just curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, like I said, we've managed to get almost the majority of all the training done just in since June. Yes, for about 4 months. But it's contingent upon our members' availability too. So I don't want to make it difficult for anyone to be able to get the training done. If we were able to designate just meetings for training, I think we could have had it all done already. I think 4 months is reasonable, but we were talking about 6 months just in the event that something happened where someone was not able to get the training. So if we said 4 months, I think we should add something like with extingent circumstances that it could be extended for, you know, maybe 2 to 6 month time frame so that a member could be able to get the training done.
Thank you. I yield.
All right. Alderwoman Keys is motioning to me. I think she has another question.
Thank you. Yes, I do. So with these trainings, are these in-person, in-classroom trainings? Are any of these electronic that they can do independently, online, and, you know, there's a certificate or something? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. All of the trainings that we've delivered have been via Zoom, except for detention facility operation training, which we combined with detainee rights, operations of correctional facility. That particular training we broke up into 2 parts because it is in person to give members the opportunity to take that training. It's been offered a couple of times. That's the last part of the training we have next week. So that's the only one that was in person. All of the rest of them have been delivered online, and I'm working with the IT department now to take those trainings and put them in a link so that members that did miss, for whatever reason, a training, they could log into the link and be able to get the training, and it could be logged so they can get credit for it.
Okay. Additionally, so these are, at this point, these are actual Zoom meetings with the facilitator.
Yes.
Going through the process of delivering information, and I guess question and answer.
Yes.
So the next question I have is regarding continued ed trainings, and I heard you say something about situations change and there needs to be some best practices that you need additional trainings for. And unfortunately, I don't see any way that you can foresee how many continued ed classes you may need. But the question is, and I'm not familiar with how long a board sits. Is it 2 years, 4 years, what?
Yeah, their terms are staggered. So I
Okay.
think with this board, it was 1 year. Some of those terms have expired already, and there was 2 year and then 3 years. Were staggered that way, I believe.
Well, with it taking 6 months to get the training done and you're only on a 1-year term, that really doesn't seem very beneficial, to the FOB
Yeah.
or the COB.
Well, I'll tell you, when I was the commissioner for the Civilian Oversight Board, those board members, that was the first thing we started with training, and we did 4 hours every week for 10 weeks. It was a lot more training, obviously, for police oversight, but that's the first thing we did, and we were able to get it done in 10 weeks.
Okay. All right, thank you. With that, I yield.
All right. Nothing further from you? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Barton. I don't have anything, but I just want to thank you for all your work on this. I know that you've been putting in a lot of work, and I certainly appreciate it. And hopefully, we'll get this thing up and moving.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the Public Safety Committee.
All right. And with that, we're going to move into public comment here. We have. Do we have another sheet as well for public comment? Okay. All right. So we have 3 people for public comment. All right. You'll each have 3 minutes per our rules. I'm going to get a timer set up, and Mr. Chasnoff will be first. And Mr. Chasnoff, if you could state your name, the neighborhood, and the neighborhood you're from.
My name's John Chasnoff. I live in University City.
All right. And do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth today?
I do.
All right. You have 3 minutes. Please proceed.
Okay. I did want to just start by underlying the point that Alderwoman Shameen Clark-Hubbard made about the training. So the cap on training is not, it's really the wrong phrase to say it's a cap on training. The training can be ongoing. It's only the 25-hour cap on the training that has to happen before somebody can begin to fulfill their responsibilities. So, if state laws change or new information is needed, the bill already provides for ongoing training for that kind of thing. So I really don't think there's a problem with that cap. It just makes sure that new members can get up and running and fulfill their responsibilities. One of the things we saw with the Civilian Oversight Board was that we had mandated training required cooperation of the police department, and they didn't always make that training available. And so members sat on the Civilian Oversight Board for months and months and months and had to be non-voting members because they didn't have access to the training we needed. So to me, the way this bill words the issue of training, a certain amount of training gets done quickly, gets somebody up and running and on the board, and then they can do ongoing training after that. I think the way it's written now really answers those concerns. I did want to speak in favor of this bill because I think it's a great idea to consolidate what was Alderman Vaccaro's bill into this one. It was cumbersome to do it that way. If you all remember, he was the head of public safety at the time, and so I think it was more for political reasons that the bills were kept separate, and I think it's great that we're combining them now. I think it also makes a lot of sense to redo the training the way I just talked about, and also this issue of access and special counsel, I think really do need to get worked out. One of the other things I wanted to say about training is that I have a very different perspective about it than the Director of Public Safety did. he thought it was important to get that training done, but the bill specifically does not require, the bill as passed, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard's bill, did not require that DFO members have training before they have access to the jails. And so that was really a made-up requirement, made up by the administration, and it really did hamper things. Like I said, it was done for a specific reason after our experience with the COB and the lack of access to training. It wasn't just an oversight. I like the compromise that Alderman Aldridge has come up with here, but I don't think it's fair to say we had to get this training done before access happened. I do want to say that I think we've made some suggestions to Alderman.
That is your time. If you could just finish your thought, please.
Okay. I think it's great that the DFOB has raised its voice and caused these changes to happen. I think it would be a mistake for the committee to not understand that a lot of these same problems are happening with the COB. They have not met for months and months and months. There's a backlog of cases, which rivals the concerns that people had for the circuit attorney backlog of cases. So I do think that some of the difficulties we've had in implementing the bill have spilled over into the COB, and I'm hoping this, I'll wind up. It says in the bill that the Division of Public Safety is to come before your committee annually, and that hasn't happened yet. So I wanted to really encourage you all to hold that annual meeting, bring in the ex-Commissioner Brummond, talk to some other folks about how things are going at the COB, and that you don't let your focus narrow down to some of the current controversies as we go forward.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chasnoff. Next, we will move to Reverend Gray. And Reverend, if you could just state your name and the neighborhood.
Reverend Darrell Gray. I live in the Central West End.
And do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're going to give today is going to be true to the best of your ability?
I do. Really.
All right. 3 minutes. Please proceed.
All right. I first of all want to acknowledge the staff of the DFOB. If just real quick, if you can just stand up. I want the staff to stand because I want people to understand that there are actual staff that work for the DFOB. We've been talking about this, Mr. Chair. We've been talking about the DFOB, trying to define, you can please take your seat, trying to define whose role is what. The board has been very clear from the beginning what the difference is between staff and board. We understand that these staff have been recruited, hired, trained to do a job. And they're all competent, capable, and qualified. No doubt about that. We understand that the role of the board is to receive information from the staff, to review the information from the staff, and to make recommendations based upon that. So we're very clear about what our role is. And people keep talking about, wanting to make sure that people understand what they're supposed to do. The staff is clear, the board is clear. And so that's never been the issue. The issue has been not allowing the staff to do their job and not allowing the board to do its job. That's been the issue. So when we talk about collaboration versus approval, I want to be very clear, Mr. Chair. The board, the DFOB board, back in 2022, back early August 2022, we came up with policies and procedures with our staff, with our board, and with our staff back in August. And so there's never been an absence of how to do what we're supposed to do. And I appreciate what Ms. Barton said about her going back and forth with the Commissioner of Corrections, but it's not the job of the Commissioner of Corrections to determine the policy and procedure of the DFOB. That's not our job. It's the job of the DFOB board. We did that back in August. Now, the process is that they take what we have given them, the draft, and they take it through the collaborative partners. Not for them to approve what we've done, but for them to give input. on the policies and procedures of the DFOB, not to approve it. And so that's what we've done. Now, they've gone through that. They've talked to the commissioner. They talked to public safety. They talked to personnel. Now it is in the department of the city attorney. And what their role is, according to the ordinance, is to provide collaboration, to provide input, and then it comes back to the staff. And then the staff will review it. The staff will review every comment that's been given by everybody that wants to say anything about this procedure. And then the staff will present it to the board. And then the board will ratify it. The board may not even agree with what all the other collaborative parties. That's the prerogative of the board per the ordinance. And then, I know, 3 minutes.
Yeah, that is your time. If you could just wrap up your thought, please.
I want just, if I can just wrap this up, Mr. Chair. And thank you, first of all, and thank Ms. Barton and thank the director for coming in. But my thought is that if the director's people, in his words, have visited the CJC, they didn't have to do any training to have access to the CJC. There was no training that they had to do. And the director's right. He's had some conversations with me. But the board has asked the director. The board has asked the commissioner for corrections to come before the board. It is in our right, our authority, based upon the ordinance, to require them to come before the board. They have not done it. So a phone call to the chair is not sufficient. They have to come to the board. They have not done it, chairperson. They have not come to the board. They have not made themselves available to the board. And so that is problematic, and that needs to be in the ordinance. And so thank you for this. The final arbitrator for conflict of interest cannot be the public safety director. It's a conflict. Even that is a conflict of interest. As I said at the last meeting, the final arbitrator, I'm hoping, are the appointing authorities and/or the Attorney General or the Bar Disciplinary Committee as it relates to conflict of interest regarding interpretation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Reverend. Next, we'll move to Dr. Lyndon Bowie. All right, Dr. Bowie, if you could state your name and your neighborhood.
My name is Lyndon Bowie. I live in Hazelwood, but just to give you some clarity, I serve as president of the Missionary Baptist State Convention.
Hold on for just 1 second here. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're going to give today will be true to the best of your ability?
I do.
All right, well, you have 3 minutes. Please proceed.
And as president of our state convention, we have close to 200 churches in the St. Louis area. Each of those churches have members who live and reside in the city of St. Louis. And so what happens as far as public safety is concerned in the city of St. Louis is really important to us. We have close to about 50, 60,000 members that are part of our churches that live in this area. And so as a result, we stand, first of all, to show that we do support the changes that have been put forth. We are really supportive of clarifying what the roles are and the training that ought to be taking place, helping to define what that training is, to answer some of the questions that have been used as excuses for the DFOB not going forward. Secondly, we are also concerned that the existence of the DFOB and the COB became necessary because of issues that took place within each of those different departments and the appearance of each department having to kind of police themselves. And so the demand from the public constituency was just to formulate some kind of a civilian oversight. That's what these proceedings have resulted in. We want to see them move forward. We want to see them move forward as expeditiously as possible with the kind of clarity and with the kind of power that they're going to need so that they can kind of relieve the public anxiety that maybe police are covering for police or Department of Corrections is covering for their own mistakes. So this kind of gives us another vehicle to give some assurance to the public, not that something's going wrong with either of these departments, but things are going very well within those departments, and the COB, the DFOB, can kind of be our backstop, if you will, to kind of help mitigate some of the concerns in our public. Then finally, I want to suggest that, again, just like we're here today and you were able to bring in our Director of Public Safety and others, you know, this body here and the larger body of aldermanic persons in our city really ought to be that body who everyone answers to if there are some issues. And I want to express that and commend you for that, for having this hearing and for having, not a hearing, this meeting, and the work that you're doing. Continue on and doing the great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Next, Janice Mensah. And if you could state your name and the neighborhood that you reside in.
Yes, let me just put my timer on so I can get to everything. Okay, I'm Janice Mensah. I use they, them pronouns. I live downtown, like 5 minutes from here. I don't know where that is.
Okay. And do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give will be true to the best of your ability?
Yes.
All right. You have 3 minutes. Please proceed.
So I just want to frame this meeting here today with some context. I'm the current vice chair of the DFOB, former chair. I wasn't planning to speak today. I took off from work last minute and I ran here in my socks because I just couldn't stand watching on YouTube the lies and the injustices that I was hearing here today. I also want to frame this with a few names: Robert Lee Miller, Augustus Collier, Danelle Johnson, Donald Henry, Courtney McNeil, Ashley Davis, Carlton Bernard, Terrence Smith, and Jawan Carter. As you all know, those are the people that died at the CJC. So excuse me if I'm not here to trade thank yous back and forth with the city. I just want to say this is performative. It is not collaborative. It is not collaborative that for a year while I was chair, the warden rejected meeting after meeting with me. At the end of my term as chair, we took a training on conflict resolution that's available to city employees and ourselves. I reached out to the warden and to the deputy warden to participate in mediation. They refused. So I did the conflict coaching on my own, and I found it helpful. I again reached out to offer mediation. Again, they refused. I offered that they could do, as a sign of good faith, they could do the conflict coaching on their own. They refused. While the city talks about training, the board has been talking about death. We have done the same training twice. The trainings that are online, we can't just watch the recording and it counts as training. The training that happened in person, we're not allowed to see the notes of the other board members who went. We're not allowed to get written materials from those trainings. So to say that the city is trying to make the trainings more accessible is a lie. Nicole Barton stood up here and talked about the fact that board members should be able to be removed if they don't comply. But I ask you, when the city does not comply, when the warden does not comply, when the deputy warden does not comply, when Director Coyle does not comply, what happens to them? Nothing. I was denied entry to the jail multiple times without reason. They didn't comply with the ordinance that said they had to tell me the reason and tell me when I could tour again. The board has been deceived without reason. May I remind you of the hostage situation where the city neglected to tell us that there was a death a few days before. I'm gonna wrap up.
Yeah, I was going to say that is your time, so please finish your thought,
I
though.
will. I'll finish my thought. And just the other thing that I wanted to mention, Coyle stood up here and talked about how there are comorbidities, there are pre-existing conditions. There are cities like St. Louis all over the US. But St. Louis is unique in that our inmate mortality rate is 7 times the national average. Of cities with those same comorbidities, cities with those same pre-existing conditions. What we have in St. Louis is not a jail, it's a morgue. And when you ask, where will we be in a year? We're gonna be here. You all will be here in City Hall when across from you, there will be a jail where more than 10 people have died.
Thank you for your testimony. And finally, we have Mike Milton. And Mr. Milton, if you could state your name and your neighborhood.
Happy to. Mike Milton. I live in the South Side. I have the pleasure of being in front of my alderwoman right now.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for.
But before you proceed, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is true to the best of your ability?
Absolutely.
All right, 3 minutes. Please proceed.
For sure. Yeah, just to start, first shout out to Janice for saying exactly what I wanted to say today. Even riding here, the amount of times that I heard the word trainings is absolutely ridiculous, considering that 3 people died in 40 days. 40 days. One of them died because they were dehydrated and they didn't have enough insulin. So while we talk about trainings day to day by Nicole Barton and others, families are calling us day to day asking for answers about their loved one, and they're not getting it. And we're not getting even when we ask. In fact, we've asked the warden literally 6 times to come before us, the board, and talk to us about the conditions of the jail. She declined every single time. Every single time she declined. And for us, this bill, I want to say that I vehemently oppose this bill as it's written right now. Let me tell you why. For a couple of reasons. It absolutely strips us of the power that we once had in the first bill. One of the examples of that is that it completely rids of the section that says the DFOB has authority. Let's just stop there for a second. It literally takes out DFOB authority, right? That's number one. Number two, jail access. The jail access says that they no longer provide access to DFOB members, but only the oversight staff. So although we've been fighting for access for 1.5 years, now we don't have any access to the jail at all outside of the investigators, right? According to this bill, as it's written right now. And I can read the sections if you'd like me to. Information access. I counted on the way here. We literally asked for information from that jail 21 different times. Records, videos, complaints, things that the ordinance said that we're supposed to have unfettered access to. We don't have that access, so we have not had the access after 1 year, and 10 people died in this facility in 18 months. 10 people, right? The last thing that I'll say, not last thing, but training. Oh, actually, I don't want to talk about training. Let's stick on the part where we're talking about information access. The DFOB will lose significant language about its access in this bill. Complaints, jail policy, records, some which will go to the civilian oversight staff. These proposals will repeal DFOB ordinance sections about access and information. The amendments explicitly delete the provisions related to DFOB information access. It literally X's it out. And so if I could have my way today, as a person who's been serving on this board for 1.5 years, let us do our job. We can keep talking about training. We can keep talking about how and actually we have been attending these trainings, duplicate trainings. People dying in this facility. And at this point, it's weekly, right? And so if I could ask anything from this board, I want a change of this bill as it's written right now so that we can have the power to provide answers to the families who've been waiting for this for months and sometimes years. It is your responsibility, or the blood is on your hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milton. That concludes public testimony on this. At this point, is there any written testimony, Madam Clerk? All right, no written testimony. Do any members of the board have any announcements?
Is it announcements, or can we just speak to make sure that we're clear on some of the comments that were made?
Please proceed, yeah.
Okay, good, great. Because I think this being the first time that we have heard from, in this space, from some of our board members, I think it's important that we miss this opportunity to publicly ask some questions and to make sure that we have it on record or clear on some things. Because if we just let some statements just said, that's not, I think, doing our due diligence here as board members. I want to make sure that somebody in the room or somebody might be watching that doesn't know. Can the members of the Detention Facility Oversight Board that are in the present, can you all stand? Thank you. I want to say thank you to you all. Yes, ma'am. I knew you said that. Yes, ma'am. There's 4 of them here. And I want to say thank you to you all. It's important to say thank you. Mike, we fought for you to get on the board. There's history on that, right? And you can run those tapes back. So you all being here today in committee where it makes a difference, where your voices can be heard and recorded, is very important. And I thank you all not only for that, but for the hours you have put into this oversight that we all clearly have a passion for. I think trying to go back and forth on that is wasted energy. I think the comments that you made, Mike, were very relevant. This speaks from the chair and from the space. Reverend Gray, always, making sure that we hear those. But what I do want to make sure people are aware of also, us as members and boards, when we're at the table and here in committee where this is where the change can happen, we have to be aware of what can, if you want to try to get a bill passed, and Alderman, I see it in your face. When you're trying to get, because I've been there, when you're trying to get something passed and you're trying to get it to a place where not only it's first legal, right? It can stand up and not be compromised like the first one was, John, we went through this. Some things, being able to just say you want to do them and get them done, that's not how it works. That's not being real about how this process works. And so people that are really at the table trying to get this work done and trying to create the access and trying to create the oversight for years and decades, understand that when we are coming to the table with things that cannot be passed, that cannot stand up, that we cannot do, just saying it and wanting it in there and even getting it in there, that is performative. And I do not subscribe to performative politics or policy. I just don't. My record has shown that. My comments prove that. So I'm always gonna listen and be open and available. I'm always gonna be at the table that's on the side of the people because that's where I am. But I'm not going to stand behind a lie. I'm not gonna stand behind gaslighting. I'm not gonna stand behind something that's just wants to get a response that I know cannot get done, that I know will not be implemented. My heart is broken about this whole thing. If you go back and watch those tapes and see how we fight, and I know how they fight, I know how you all fight every day. My heart is broken that we in good faith, many of us in good faith, wanted to be in place, is clearly being obstructed. We understand that, and that's why we're here at the table now trying to get past that. But we can either spend the time trying to do the things that can really get past that, or we can spend time creating more obstacles or more avenues for people to be able to manipulate and use as, I'm just gonna say political footballs down here, where nothing gets done. And I think that, again, my record and my comments show that that's not the place that I wanna be in. I want to be on the side that's getting the stuff done, and I want to be on the side of the record of the policy that works and that really works. So while I thank everybody in this room, I thank the Detention Facility Oversight Board members that have done this work. God knows I thank the staff. Most of them I know personally before Commissioner Brumman and after. And I also do thank the work that Nicole Barton and the work that needs to go in from the city side, because going against and not having the support and not having those departments in place creates more, to your point, year later, Janice, we'll be right here having this same conversation. My colleague, Alderwoman Sanye, said it earlier when she mentioned about going and not collaborating and not having communication here in positions that you can get stuff done versus having conversations, I think you mentioned in the media and some other places. That's a very valid point. It's a very valid point. So I talk about it all the time. The committee is where this can happen. The committee is where amendments, this committee is where we can come together. I understand the role, and sometimes your place is in other spaces other than the committee. But you have to bring their work back to the committee, or else it'll be just all for naught. So my thank yous again go to everybody in this room. I will continue to stand on what I know my moral, my heart tells me to do in the position I'm in, which again is not lie to anybody, not gaslight anybody, not tell you I can do something when I know for a fact I can't do it. What I will always continue to do is work in the position I have and advocate and make sure that you all have the tools to be able to advocate for yourselves, to be able to get stuff done with or without us, with or without the administration that's in place now, whatever administration gonna be in place a year later. Because again, to Mike's point, this right here ain't about us. It's about across the street. And it's about the names that Janice named before. And God forbid if it's any more names. So I thank you for letting me make those comments about that. And with that, I don't have any other specific questions.
All right, thank you for that. Very well stated. I think everyone here, I can't speak for everyone, but I certainly am there with you. Yes?
I wanted to make sure I did the same, and thank you all for being here. But I also want to apologize to you, and I want you to know that I do feel in part responsible for what is happening and what is going on. And I do agree that there are lives and deaths that are happening, and these folks are innocent. And I totally can understand the frustration sometimes, because I think to what Alderman Clark Hubbard was saying, you know, I get in you all's position, getting phone calls from family and those things like that. You can feel like all of the things that we're doing is bureaucracy that's in the way. And so I just want to apologize to you all and let you know that, you know, as someone who is in a position of leadership in our city, I also am heartbroken by what's happening, but also I want you all to know that I am totally open to making whatever changes we need to make to doing that. And I'm so glad that we did bring it back to the desk, because at the end of the day, what I don't want to happen is our tensions or our differences as individuals, or, you know, it is politics. Sometimes we get mad at each other, we don't talk, we isolate, we leave people out. And at the end of the day, we're supposed to be doing what's best for the people. So I want to thank you for being here, but I also want you to know, and I know I'm not alone, that many of us do feel a sense of responsibility to fix this and get it on. And I do hear your extreme sense of urgency and like, let us do our job is so real. So I want to make sure that I just say that and put that on record, that I agree that we are all to be held accountable, especially as members of public safety, for what is happening, and that this should be at the top of all of our lists to work together and to fix this. So I want to make sure that I just go on record and say that, because I know what I've seen sometimes is that it's a thankless job. You're volunteers, you're doing all of this, and you're dealing with something of such a serious degree. So I just want to make sure that I said that and put that on record, and also that I thank Alderman Aldridge for filing the legislation, for starting these conversations, for taking the time to really look through the issue and figure out what can be adjusted and what can be done, and put yourself in a position that I know is not easy, just like it wasn't easy when Alderwoman Clark Harbor did it, or Alderman Vaccaro, you know. So I just want to too, that I commend you for, you know, taking a stand and bringing this conversation up and doing the work, and make sure you know that I'm totally here as we move forward to continue to do the work, to do what we need to do to fix this and keep folks alive, and let them serve their time and get their ruling and go through the process. And with that, I yield.
All right, well, thank you for that. It doesn't seem like there's any further announcements. At this point, I'll accept a motion to excuse Alderman Oldenburg. Second. All right, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderwoman Sanier. Aye. Alderman Aldridge. Chair Narayan.
No.
Okay, we have one present, 3 aye votes, and 1 no.
Well, lucky for Alderman Oldenburg, the ayes have it. And with that, we will adjourn. Thank you all.